So we're continuing our discussion on how to dynamically change the number of new record rows in a grid, and we're looking now at the on-grid execute event, which fires every time the grid is run. So it fires the first time the grid is run, and then it fires on every single AJAX callback. Now the number of new record rows in the grid is controlled by this property, which is passed inside the E object. So by setting this property over here, you can change dynamically the number of new record rows. So next, as you recall, in our JavaScript event, we were setting the property of a state object called new record rows. So that object gets submitted on every single callback inside request variables underbar SI2. So we're checking now to see if e.rv underbar SI2, which is basically all of the objects inside the state info, and then we're looking for new record rows. If that variable exists, then we're setting the number of new record rows to the value in that variable. So the first time the grid is run, this variable will not exist, and that means that the number of new record rows will not be overwritten. But when we change the number of new record rows, that forces an AJAX callback because of the grid.refresh, which then causes the grid execute event to fire, and then in this case this variable will be defined, and so you can see we're going to change its value over here. So let's go look now at this running, and we'll go here and change this to say 10 rows, and you can see now the grid is displaying 10 rows. Let's go back to say only 1 row, go back to 10 rows, etc. Now and there we go. Let's just put a debug 1 over here, and we'll actually see this all happening. So now when I click working preview here, the grid's going to be running for the very first time. So the on-grid execute event fires, but this variable does not exist, and so therefore we just skipped over that row, and then the grid displays with 3 records. Now we go back and change it to say 10 records, and you can see now that as we debug into our code that this variable in fact was submitted. If we go look inside E and then RV and then underbar SI2, you can see there that it did in fact get submitted. And so because it was submitted, we've now changed the value of that property to 10 rows, and now when we run the grid, basically it now has 10 rows. Now the one final thing that I want to point out is that you can see here that when I sort the grid, this control here remains set at 10 rows, reflecting the current selection. Now that didn't happen automatically. Let's go back now to client-side events, and I'm going to temporarily comment out that line and show you what happens now. So I'm going to go there and choose 5 records, and then you can see as soon as I clicked 5 records, it displays 5 records. This value here went back to 3 records, and the reason that it went back to 3 records is that this HTML here is in the above grid freeform edit region. When the grid got refreshed, the whole HTML of the grid got refreshed, including the section that's above the freeform edit region. So this HTML got rewritten back to its original value. So what we're doing here in the after AJAX callback complete, we're just simply setting the value in that drop down box back to the value that was put into this grid object variable over there. So now when we run the grid and we change it to 5 records, it still shows 5 records after the callback is complete. So I hope you found this useful, and thank you very much.